Hello everyone, and welcome to this, the third and final live stream event of this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. I'll start by reintroducing myself again, although I guess if you got to this stage of the programme, then you'll definitely know who I am. My name is Graham McPhee. I'm the lead educator on Caring for Vulnerable Children, and I'm based here at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow in Scotland. So thanks for joining us to everybody who, if you're watching in real time, or as I know most of you do, watching the recording after the fact. So what we're going to try and do over the next kind of 40 minutes or so, we'll kind of pull together kind of some of the threads and discussions that have been developing over the 6 weeks of the programme. And again, I'd just like to kind of thank everybody for all your contributions across all 6 weeks on so many of the different steps, lots of different comments getting posted, lots of different conversations happening. And I guess at this point I'd just like to stress that obviously that doesn't need to stop with the end of week 6. If you're registered for the course, you'll retain access to it for some time afterwards, and you're able to keep those kind of conversations going. And likewise today, I've kind of said this in the live stream events in week 2 and week 4 as well, that please, if after watching this and listening to the different things that I've got to say, if there are different things you would like to follow up on, comment on, etc., then use the comments page on this step as well to keep those conversations going. And there's lots of important conversations to be had. So over the next 40 minutes or so, I've got kind of 3 or 4 things I would like to do. One, I'd like to respond to some specific questions and comments that have been posted by different participants in relation to just some different issues. Secondly, I'd like to talk about Billy's story. We've obviously come to the end of Billy's story, and there was a poll last week, and I'd like to talk about some of the things coming out of that and the way that we concluded Billy's story. Thirdly, we had the 2-part poll, the 10 scenarios that you were presented with in week 5, and then you got more information, and we had a different we did the poll again in week 6, and to talk about some of the changes that we saw in the responses there, and some of the kind of just different things that gives us to think about. And then finally some kind of catch-all questions, just some final comments from different learners that have been posted on the pages. So I'm going to start with in advance of this session, there was a couple of specific questions posted for me with regards to the live stream event, asking us to think about a couple of things. So the first is from Heather Homeyard. So Heather, again, thanks for your posting. You've been a really regular contributor and participant over the 6 weeks. That's hugely appreciated. And Heather made a number of points. I want to pull out a couple of things about them. She says, I want to know what I can do at a bigger level. How can I help to ensure vulnerable children are getting enough support in their schools, at home and in their communities? And she goes on to talk about feeling angry about the way the vulnerable children are not being valued by politicians, councils and the media, and want to turn that anger into action. I guess at this point is you've mentioned politicians. Given some of the things that we think about and talk about over the 6 weeks of Caring for Vulnerable Children, and especially the link between poverty and social justice and different outcomes for children and families, it would be a bit daft to kind of continue this conversation and not acknowledge the context of the current general election campaign that we've gone on here in the UK, and within that general election campaign, and kind of quite clear, I'm not going to kind of turn this into a party political broadcast in favour of one party or another, but certainly the issue of children, child poverty, and austerity. These are kind of huge issues that are kind of playing out within this general election, and we see competing claims being made about the number of children in poverty and the impact that this can have, and certainly what the statistics tell us that over the last 9 or 10 years that we have seen a marked rise in the number of children living in poverty in the UK, and a significant proportion of those children living within households where adults are working, so challenging some of the mythical perceptions that exist about poverty and about the different factors that might be associated with. So we're seeing increasing numbers of in-work poverty also. So Heather, the frustrations that you express in your post are I think frustrations that are shared by lots of people up and down the country in terms of kind of what can be done to kind of challenge some of this. And I guess it leads lots of people to conclude about kind of what are the actual priorities of different governments and different political parties in terms of actually wanting to do something real and tangible to help to promote social justice and to help the kind of circumstances of children and young people living in communities up and down the country, and that question of kind of what can I do? That one of the inputs in week 6 of the programme, one of the films you were asked to watch from John Paul Fitzpatrick, and John Paul was part of his talk was almost a bit of a kind of a call to arms, kind of saying to people, kind of, I think everybody's got the question to ask, right, what can I individually do within both my professional life and my personal life in terms of taking forward kind of some of these agendas. And yeah, there is a political dimension to this. I think many of us feel we've got a responsibility to continue to lobby political parties and different institutions about saying this needs to be a matter of priority in terms of kind of child poverty, in terms of increasing levels of homelessness that is very evident to most people in the UK, and a range of other issues kind of associated with that. I'm not going to kind of sit here and pretend I've got any kind of silver bullet or kind of magical answer, Heather, in terms of kind of what we can do, other than I think it's something that we absolutely cannot let slip off the agenda, and we've absolutely got to keep pushing within our, if we are employed in the sector, for us to be continuing to kind of lobby kind of our organisations to do what they can be doing, and to bring pressure to bear where it can in terms of kind of pushing things back up the chain in terms of policy decisions, political decisions, so that we, as much as possible, see resources getting directed to the right places. And that notion of resources getting directed to the right places, I think, has a real resonance for Billy's story, because one of the common themes in terms of our discussions about Billy's story over the last 6 weeks has been about, are families such as Billy's prioritised in terms of the allocation of resources to them? Because there's been certainly a consistent theme across a lot of your comments about Billy's story about this family would benefit from support, and families such as Billy's family up in the country would undoubtedly benefit from support, but are they able to access it? Is that support available within the current financial and resource issues that we have? So Heather, thank you for that comment and a number of other comments that you've posted across the 6 weeks. Your participation has been greatly appreciated. There's a further question posted from Andy McKee, and he asked a specific question about the children's panel system, the children's hearing. And obviously in week 5 of Billy's story, we watched Billy go to children's hearing, and in the course material over the last couple of weeks you've heard and found out a bit more about the children's hearing system that exists in Scotland. And Andy asks, I think, a really interesting question. So he talks about it was designed and set up in the 1960s, so it came out of the 1960 Social Work Scotland Act. It actually got put into place in the early 1970s, but it's out there in the 1960s. And you said it was, and you use the quotes in terms of mainly dealing with delinquents, and yet you're right, the children's hearing system was born at that time out of a concern about the number of children being involved in the adult criminal justice system, and this was seen as a diversion from that. So it was particularly focused at that time about thinking about young people who had committed offences. But your question goes on to talk about, is it now time to review the function of the Children's Panel to separate out the work of young people with committed offences from trying to support young people who more in need and experiencing vulnerability, poverty, etc. And the statistics on this are kind of quite stark. And again, we've spoken about this at various points in the course, where the children's hearing system, which was set up primarily to think about responding to and working with children who committed offences, but now they form quite a much smaller proportion of the total amount of children who go through the children's hearing system in any given year. And we've got far more children being referred to the children's hearing system now on grounds that are associated with care and protection. And that does beg a couple of fundamental questions about a system that was set up a number of years ago to respond to one issue, is now been asked to do something else. Is been asked to respond to a much higher proportion of children who are experiencing a different set of circumstances. So this question about the role, function, purpose of the children's hearing system in Scotland is one that has now been debated for a number of years, Andy. Like a lot of things, there's a whole range of different views exist with regards to that, and there's a spectrum of opinions. Some people who would very staunchly stand behind the way the system is currently designed and function, and others that would perhaps lobby a bit more for something along the lines in terms of what you're talking about kind of separating out these different functions. I guess I'll offer in a different perspective as well, that my view of the children's hearing system was first shaped by my experience working in residential childcare for 10 years, and so the vast majority of children that I was working with were placed in the different residencies I was working in, were placed there via the children's hearing system, and kind of different supervision orders were placed on them. So I experienced it firsthand as a practitioner, and then sometimes getting exposed to other ways of doing things can bring a different perspective to our views and opinions, and that for me came through spending 3 summers in North Carolina in the US as part of a social work exchange program, and for 3 days and a day each of those 3 summers going along to a juvenile court in the US and watching how that system plays out, and what a difference, what a real culture shock that was for me. And seeing children who in the Scottish system may have committed offences but also had a huge number of kind of care and protection issues, and thinking about how they would have been responded to within the Scottish system as contrasted to the US system, whereby it was a very legal criminal justice based system, to the point of seeing children being brought in handcuffs and feet shackles and orange jumpsuits, being escorted in by police officers with guns on their waistband, and in a formal courtroom setting represented by lawyers, and a very legalistic approach to it, and a very, very strong notion of if you've did wrong, there's got to be consequences, and you've got to be potentially punished. And it was if I talk about just an absolute eye opener in terms of thinking about any of these children, if they were Scottish and had behaved in the same way in Scotland, how the children's hearing system would have responded to them in a very different way. And I guess the point I'm trying to make, Andy, is I do think our system it undoubtedly does have some challenges to respond to, especially in terms of the increasing numbers of children being referred on care and protection grounds. But I would be really concerned if any shift in Scotland saw us take a more kind of crime and punishment legalistic approach to some young people, the way that I experienced it in these juvenile courts in North Carolina, and this was in the summers of 2007, 2009 and 2011, so in kind of fairly kind of recent memory. So yeah, there's lots for us to think about in terms of the children's hearing system moving forward. But Heather and Andy, thank you to both of you for posting those questions. Right, we move on to Billy's story now. So I always do this in week 6 at this point. So if you're watching if you're watching this in real time or you're watching the recording of this, and you haven't watched the final instalment of Billy's story, because obviously we hold the final instalment of Billy's story back a little bit to let the poll happen. The final instalment is up now. If you don't want to get a spoiler and you've not watched it and you don't want me to give the ending away, then can stop watching and listen to this now. Go and watch the end of Billy's story, the final instalment, and then you can jump back in and join us again. Okay, right. So I'll assume that anybody that wants to do that has done that now. So I can now talk about the ending. So you'll have watched the end of Billy's story, and you've seen that this version of Billy's story ends with Billy remaining at home. The children's panel, the hearing members decide that Billy being removed from home, by even just in a kind of short-term respite basis, would not be the best thing for him, and what they would like him to do is to stay at home with mum, but with additional supports to be put in there. And that was largely in line with the way that you voted in the poll. So 84% of you this time said that you thought that was the best thing for Billy. Now, it's interesting to note that this is now our 11th run of Billy's story. That's the highest percentage we've ever had making that vote. There's always been a kind of quite a big majority of participants have wanted that. Have said that they thought that should happen, but it would generally more be in the kind of low 70s. So 84%. There's a bigger proportion of you saying that this way this time, and in many ways I think that's kind of it's very logical and very understandable. I've pulled out kind of some of the comments that people have made in relation to this. So Joan Main, Joan, thanks for your comment. She said absolutely right decision for Billy. They took Billy's views into account and thought about what he needs is the correct supports for Billy and his mum are in place, and that's going to and doing that would be the best thing for him. Again, Joan makes the comment that lack of resources is a big issue, and she said, however, this should not prevent a hearing from deciding a child needs a specific resource. The local authority must provide it or answer as to why they can't. And probably it is interesting, again, go back to my own kind of practice experience. I can think of very specific examples where accompanying young people to children's hearings, where the panel members making a decision and that not being followed through because of a lack of resources, and us being back at a panel in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and the panel members being annoyed, being angry, being frustrated about what they saw as this not being followed through. And in some of those instances, this might have involved young people having a secure residence order placed on them, and the young person not being placed in a secure unit because there was no resources available. So it's an interesting point that you make, Joan, about the fact that when children's hearings do make recommendations, but ultimately they don't necessarily have the power to ensure that happens, and we require the local authorities to carry those things through. So, but the recommendation should count for something, and it can help social workers and other agencies in terms of lobbying for these resources. Similarly, Stephen Mark DeMarby, Stephen, I hope I'm getting your surname correct there, agreed and said the panel made the right decision in Billy's case. He's great that he can now stay with his mother for both their sakes. I understand and agree that each case will be different and therefore needs to have an individual assessment, and also kind of said he was pleased with the fact that the panel took Billy's feelings into consideration. But perhaps the bit of your post that most jumped out at me, and we purposely put this into the narrative as well, in terms of the scenes you see when Billy and his mum return home. The story, of course, doesn't end here. They will both need to receive further help, counselling and care. And we purposely make this point in week 6 of Billy's story, that we've only got 6 weeks to tell a certain part of a story, but this isn't the end of the story for Billy and his mum, and for the thousands of families out there who are experiencing issues similar to Billy and his mum. Their stories will take twists and turns, and different things will happen, but there's often no definitive end in that sense, and that ongoing need for different support and different inputs, be it school-based, community-based, within the family, or more statutory in terms of kind of perhaps social work involvement. These needs will be ongoing, and so whilst a number of you are making posts about I'm delighted that Billy's staying at home, I think for many people the real crux of the matter will be, will they get appropriate and adequate support in order to sustain that at home? Because there would obviously be a concern if Billy stays at home but nothing much changes in terms of the supports that are put in place, and perhaps his mum's mental health deteriorates further and Billy is potentially left in a more vulnerable situation. That would be a concern for everybody, obviously. So whilst many people would agree that this is the correct decision, it could be argued it's only the correct decision if it's actually followed through in terms of resource and support, in order to help Billy and his mum and the whole family kind of function, and not just function and survive, but actually kind of thrive and recover and develop. So the correct decision to a point in that sense, in terms of is what happens next in episodes 7, 8, 9, all the episodes that don't happen, but the ongoing story for Billy, that will really be that will dictate whether this is the correct turn of events or not. And similarly, and again, this is another comment from Heather, who I posted the question earlier. So Heather, thanks for your comment about this. I'm pleased that Billy stayed with his mum, but then you say the video overall still made me very sad. Listening to the narrator at the end and knowing the harsh realities of vulnerable children in Scotland today. And this perhaps links back to my earlier point about the increasing numbers of children in poverty in Scotland, the increasing numbers of families experiencing in work poverty, and Billy's family may well be an example of that. So there's real challenges for us, as it certainly, also I'm kind of sitting here talking about a kind of a Scottish UK based context, but there's real challenges for us in our context in terms of kind of how we support families such as this kind of moving forward. And Heather makes the point, I'm concerned that there are more cuts coming. I wonder how families are going to stay afloat, never mind flourish. And I think that links back to my earlier point about I think many of us would like to think that what we shouldn't be doing is merely just putting sticking plasters in situations and just allowing people just to survive and function. We want actual kind of families and communities and individual children within that to do more than that. We want them to grow, we want them to thrive, we want them to flourish, and provide them with the best possible opportunities that we can. The Scottish First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, is kind of one of the central planks of a lot of the things that she talks about, would be about wanting Scotland to be the best place in the world for young people and children to grow up in, the best place in the world to be a child in. So there's lots of challenges for a government society with such lofty aims as that, in terms of how we actually deliver on that. But again, thank you for all the comments that have been posted in relation to Billy's story all the way through the 6 weeks. Again, I think it's important to stress also that Billy's story, no, Billy's not a real person, he's fictional within the story, but the circumstances, the scenario that we created for Billy's story is very real for thousands of families up and down the country, and those challenges in terms of a lot of the issues that have been raised in Billy's stories, and especially about this notion of the best way to support Billy can often be argued to be to support the wider family unit, but sometimes how challenging that can be in terms of access and resources. Then there's challenges for us as a government, as organisations, as a society, as to how we deliver on some of that. So thank you. I'd like to touch on briefly the two-part poll that we had in weeks 5 and 6. I'm just going to pause it to get a drink of water. Thank you. So it was similar to the poll in week 1. You had 10 scenarios. We asked you to pick the 3 that you thought caused you the most concern. The difference was this time we took the vote in week 5, and then in week 6 we extended each of the scenarios, gave you a bit more information and said, right, now pick the 3 that caused you most concern. And there was some 2 or 3 scenarios where there was some significant changes, and those are the ones that I'm going to focus on. All these results are now on the poll page on week 6, so if you haven't looked at them already, you can click on that and see that. So there was 3 scenarios where we saw quite significant change. So scenario 1, scenario 2 and scenario 6. So 1 and 6 both went up the way in terms of more concern. So scenario 1 was Kelly, who was 14, and in week 1 you get told Kelly doesn't attend school regularly. When she does, she falls asleep in class. She was referred by her guidance teacher. And then when that gets extended, further investigation shows her father left family 2 years ago. Her mother's a drug addict. She falls asleep in class because she's looking after her 4-year-old brother, her 3-year-old sister at home. She's worried that something will happen to her mum. And perhaps unsurprisingly, this went from 3% to 30%. In terms of, so in that first week, only 3% of you who voted had that in your top 3, and it went to 30%, a third of you in week 2. And again, especially when we kind of find out more of the details about what's going on in the family home, and particularly the fact that we've got 2 younger siblings who are 4 and 3, and Kelly having a significant caring role for them, and that causing more people more concern. So a kind of fairly logical conclusion to come to. And then likewise, scenario 6, we saw a rise, and it went from 29% to 48%. So what you get told to begin with is Ross is 18 months old, he's in hospital with a broken arm, he was in the care of his parents at the time, and there's no proof as to what happened to Ross. And then as the scenario gets extended, Ross was referred by the doctor to the social work department. Records show that Ross had suffered various bruises over recent months. Another baby is due soon. A child protection case conference was held, and it referred Ross to the reporter. So again, not kind of fairly logical, not surprising in any way that we've seen this go up by roughly 20% of you, because we find out actually that this isn't just a one-off event. Records show that Ross has suffered from various bruises over recent months, and then we know we've got another baby is due, and there's going to be concerns raised about is there more to this, and is the unborn baby at risk and going to be at risk when it's born and becoming subject to child protection proceedings. So again, not at all surprising that we saw that rise. The scenario that I want to spend most time talking about is scenario 2, and that was the one that we saw coming down, and that is kind of really kind of interesting and significant. So scenario 2. So in week 1, Jane is 7, Jim is 5. The mother lives with a man who regularly physically assaults her. Neighbours reported their concerns to the police. So that's what you got in week 5, and 52% of you highlighted that as being of kind of high concern. So in week 2, it was the third most picked scenario. There's another 2 scenarios. scenario 4 and scenario 10 that were very high and stayed very high in week 2. But Jane and Jim in week 5, that was the third highest one. And then the extra information you get in week 6 is the children have never been assaulted but have witnessed their mother being abused. The police referred children to the hearing system because they're concerned about their safety. The children love their mother and she loves them. And that saw us go from 52% down to 16%. So far less of you concerned about these 2 children now. And this is kind of really interesting in the context of what we do know about domestic abuse and what we do know about the impact on children, especially young children, of being in a household where domestic abuse is present, where it's a feature, and then witnessing that and being subject to that. And I guess what we can assume is that this drop in concern mirrors or reflects some societal takes on domestic abuse and how this might or might not impact, and the assumption for many people being, right, it's not as concerned as we thought because the children themselves aren't being assaulted, and yeah, that's obviously a good thing, the fact that the children are not being assaulted, but as I say, that what we know about domestic abuse and the increase in evidence and research about the impact on children and young people of being in a house, living in a house where domestic abuse is present, there's a feature, and actually it's part of the scenario where they have witnessed their mother being abused, that this has the potential to have all sorts of impacts on the children, emotionally, developmentally, physically, and an impact on their development and their behaviour in a whole range of ways. So that them, as I say, them not being assaulted themselves, any child not being assaulted is obviously a good thing, but they are still in a household that is hugely risky, with huge concerns for the well-being of everybody within that house, and thinking about the potential impact on growth and development of those 2 young children. So it's an interesting, in terms of that going down from 52 to 16%, in terms of kind of what that might tell us about kind of some of the attitudes that exist about, and some of the knowledge that exists about domestic abuse, and the impact on in this scenario not just Jane and Jim's mother but the children also, and it probably gives us some pause for thought just in terms of the long road that we've still got to travel, in terms of how we encourage the wider population to view this issue and view it as and kind of think about the impact on everybody within households where domestic abuse is present, and think about the best way to protect and promote the development of children, and challenge some of the attitudes that perhaps still exist about domestic abuse. Again, I say all the results are on the page, on the week 6 poll page, so go in and look at the comments there, and you'll see my comments in relation to them. Right, so as we come to the kind of last 5 or 10 minutes or so, I'd just like to kind of try and kind of pull some things together. So I'd just like again to say kind of thank you for everybody that has participated across the 6 weeks of the course. It's been great to read your comments, read your questions, and see the different engagement with it. I've pulled out a couple of comments that people have made towards the end of week 6, kind of pulling some things together. So that the first is from Rachel McLeod. So Rachel, thanks for your participation across the 6 weeks and posting this comment. And it's quite a long comment, so I'm just going to kind of pull out kind of part of it. And Rachel says, I need to consider what further scaffolding I can provide so that young people can feel safe and secure while they are learning. And you're talking about you need to consider what you can do in your job to make opportunities more accessible to vulnerable children. And what more can be done, what could be done differently to improve how we care for vulnerable children. You also make the point about services needing more funding and professionals need to be trusted more to provide opportunities for children and young people. So again, those two things also pick up on some themes that have been fairly dominant across the 6 weeks. But I think that kind of some of the things you were posting there, Rachel, kind of link into some of the things that John Paul was talking about in terms of kind of how we can get kind of what can each of us do individually in order to push forward some of this agenda. So thanks for making the comment that you have, Rachel. Also a comment here from Emma Walton. So again, Emma, thank you for your participation across the 6 weeks and for posting this comment. And within your comment, you said that you should find the course interesting, much to consider about caring for vulnerable children, a lot to change to get it right. But you then say, in particular, more support for certain families from the start and in the early years from birth. And again, kind of linking this back to kind of politics in terms of where we target resources, or even thinking back to linking it back to the conversation I had about our children's hearing system versus perhaps the kind of children juvenile courts that I experienced in the US. And there's a strong argument for saying if we put more emphasis on that sort of stuff, is we're almost waiting for things to happen, for things to go wrong, and then respond to it there. And there's very strong arguments for saying actually, in terms of the more support and resource that we can put in at early stages, when children are younger, and supporting families and communities before we allow issues to be experienced, before we allow kind of problems to develop, then ethically, if for nothing else, that feels a better way of doing things. But actually, a lot of the research and statistics would suggest actually, if you're wanting to get more effectiveness for your financial investment, then that's a better way of doing it also. So again, I think it's also worth interrogating our various governments, political parties, organisations, in terms of how much they will actually prioritise more investment for more children and communities at a younger age, as opposed to perhaps more kind of firefighting further down the line. And then finally, given that you've been such a regular contributor, Heather, actually the last comment I've got is kind of one I've pulled out for yourself. And you say a number of things, but I just want to kind of pick out one particular thing. You say social workers need more support and more time and less cases to be able to do work with families and children. All staff need good support and supervision. I think there's a kind of really important point here, and we've kind of touched on it in various different stages of the programme, that for those kind of working in the sector, that the task of supporting vulnerable children, vulnerable families, and especially those that have experienced difficult circumstances, that in turn can be very challenging and draining and demanding for staff. And yet you're right, we need social workers. We need all staff within the sector to be given the conditions and the tools in order that they can do the job to the best of their ability. So we don't need them to disappear under a pile of cases so large that they struggle to have time to actually meet with families and spend time with children. We don't need them to experience stress and strains themselves because of those workload pressures. We need to allow people to try and carry out their job to the best of their abilities. And again, it's almost coming back to this issue of resources again, that we need organisations that are resourced appropriately to allow social workers and other professionals to carry out these tasks in a meaningful way. So thank you for that comment. The very last thing I'd like to say, I've kind of mentioned this certainly in the week 2 live stream event. I can't remember if I mentioned it 2 weeks ago, but it's to kind of flag up that if you've enjoyed this programme and you are interested in more, so I'm going to lean over and take this. See, I've got a comment from Sarah's passing in. Oh, it's some stats, thank you. So If you are interested in continuing to study with us here at the University of Strathclyde round about this subject matter, then there's one particular opportunity that I would like to kind of flag up to you, and you can get the information about this via the final page of the week 6 material. As well as being the lead educator on care for vulnerable children, I'm also the course lead on, we have an MSc in Child and Youth Care Studies by Distance Learning. And again, it's a complete distance learning programme, so there's no attendance requirement here in Glasgow, so it's open to students from across the world. It's a master's degree as opposed to a participatory course such as this, so it has kind of also it's a fee-paying course, and it has more entrance requirements in terms of a prior qualification of first degree typically, and relevant work experience. But if that is something that appeals to you or potentially might appeal to you, then I would encourage you to follow the links on the page, and you can find out more about our MSc there. And if you have any questions about it, then you can access my email address at the university via that, and feel free to get in touch. And I'd be happy to get back to you, provide you with more information. And it's also worth kind of flagging up that as somebody who has completed the Care for Vulnerable Children course, if you successfully apply for the MSc and are accepted, the completion certificate for Care for Vulnerable Children would make you eligible for a 10% fee discount on the Child and Youth Care Studies programme, so that's something that's worth thinking about. So, just some final statistics to kind of talk about. It's been another great run of Care for Vulnerable Children. There's been over 2,600 of you have joined this course. Where one of the things that we can always pride ourselves in this course is about the amount of kind of social learners, and the term social learners, what does that actually mean? It means people that post comments, and we're up over 43% of you posting comments, which for courses such as this on the Future Learn site is exceptionally high. So there's something not just about this programme, but about the group of people that attracts to it. So I really enjoy the fact that we have so many people actively taking part, being sociable, and posting comments and participating. So thank you very much for doing that. And that leads us to the fact that we've had over 6,000 comments posted in total, and a truly global audience, over 100 different countries represented amongst those 2,600 joiners. Australia, Nigeria, India, Egypt. These are just kind of say a list of over 100 of kind of participants from around the globe. I'd just like to finish by kind of thanking everybody for joining us, for staying with us for the 6 weeks and participating. I say you can continue to post comments on the course on the pages for as long as you've got access to the programme. And if you would like to find out more about the MSc, then please do get in contact with me, and I'll get back to you. And thank you very much. Okay.